Welcome to Talkin' About It, where we're doing a deep dive into the Lord of the Rings books from two very different perspectives. I'm Evelyn, and I've never read the books.
I'm Robert, and I've read the books too many times to count. Come join us on this adventure.
Hey guys, just wanted to put a reminder before we started the episode that our Patreon limited edition Discord for just a single dollar is still available. It's probably going to be available still through the end of August, but honestly, as long as like quarantining and social distancing and stuff is still recommended, we're probably still going to have it up. But for now, it is still up and running, so definitely get that Discord access. We have a lot of fun on there.
Hi, I'm Evelyn.
And I'm Robert.
And we're talking about it.
Right, so we are at the chapter called Council of Elrond.
And I made some predictions.
Yes, you did.
So I was only able to come up with two predictions because I really wasn't sure what was going to happen. So my predictions were that Sean Bean's character, Boromir, was going to...
Who?
It's Boromir, right?
That's not what you just said.
What did I say?
You said boring you.
Oh, well, I was bored during a lot of this chapter. Anyway, I predicted that he would actually say the phrase, "One does not simply walk into Mordor." It felt like something that they would pull directly from the book. And then I also predicted that the Fellowship of the Ring itself would be created.
Okay.
So we'll see how I was while we discuss this. But before we discuss this was a meaty chapter.
It's a very meaty chapter.
And I'll be honest, I struggled to read it. It was a little dry in places. It was just information dump after information dump. A lot of stuff was hinted at that I didn't really get. It was a lot. It was a struggle to read.
Okay, well, one reason is Tolkien broke every rule about book writing when he wrote this chapter.
Awesome.
Okay? So, first of all, it's 15,000 words long. Okay?
That's like a medium-sized fan fiction.
Yes. And there are too many speaking. There are 12 people speaking in this chapter.
It was like a few times I had to go, wait, who's talking?
And 7 of them are introduced to us in this chapter.
Yeah. I highlighted a lot and noted, like, oh, this character is introduced. Oh, this character is introduced. It was a lot. It should have been covered in many meetings.
Gandalf talks about half this chapter. And it contains quotes from 7 more people, which 5 of them are people we have never heard from before in the book.
It was almost like Grandpa telling a story where, and then he said blah, 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 and they said blah, blah, blah. Like, it really felt like Grandpa was telling the story.
Right, and 2 of the people that Gandalf quotes is very important for us to hear because we need to know this information much later in the book.
Great.
And then Glowing gives us even more quotes.
Yes. Glowing gives us a lot of information about what's going on with the dwarves, but we'll just get to that in time. I guess we can just go ahead and dive into the chapter. I don't really think that there's a way to do a summary of this chapter except just a lot of information is revealed. And then Frodo's like, all right.
Right. So what I decided to do, I'm going to kind of keep this one going.
Okay.
Right. And a lot of it we're just going to tell people read.
Yeah, read it yourself because I mean the small bits individually are well written. It's just a lot of well written things thrown at you.
Right. So it's like a committee meeting from hell.
Okay, I agree.
But it doesn't get very bogged down. I mean, it gets bogged down a little bit. Doesn't get very bogged down because Tolkien's understanding of history and how to use it in telling a story is phenomenal because that's the type of thing he studies.
Right.
Sam kind of sneaks in with Frodo.
Right.
He was not really invited.
I do want to say, at the beginning of the passage, something that I wrote down was, not all that was spoken needs to be told here. And when I first read that, I'm like, wait a second, yes it does. This all seems like very important information. And then about halfway through the chapter, I went, never mind. I totally changed my mind. I feel like less could have been told to me. Just want to point it out that it actually says that not everything is even in this chapter about what they talked about, and I'm glad.
Right. But Gandalf warns us by warning Frodo that this meeting is going to be of a great length and great importance.
Yes.
So they show up. Elrond has Frodo sit directly beside him.
Yes.
Arresto. No, not Arresto.
There were so many names, honestly, I would believe you.
So Arrestor, who's one of the first ones to speak, was originally a half-elf.
A half-elf? I didn't think there were half-elves in The Lord of the Rings.
It was originally a half-elf. And he was also going to be the Legolas character.
Oh,
and
okay.
So, but Tolkien straightened that up.
I did notice that they mention Gimli and Legolas and Boromir very early on in the chapter. They do introduce them very early on in the chapter with not much description given to Gimli or Legolas, but a very grand... Oh my god, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. I have no idea what you're looking for.
What he looks like is grand.
What you still haven't found it.
Okay.
Start over.
So I like that Tolkien does introduce Gimli, Legolas, and Boromir very early on in the chapter because, from my knowledge, they are very important and they are part of the Fellowship of the Ring that has great importance later. But what I found interesting is that Gimli and Legolas don't have a lot of information or even description given about them, but Boromir is described in this grandeur finery with great clothes and this very grand appearance. I don't know another synonym for grand right now, but that's what I got.
Okay. So some of the people we have here are Arrestor, which is the half-elf.
Okay.
Right.
Can you explain half-elf for a second? What does that mean in Tolkien?
Half-elf is that there is a human somewhere in his DNA.
Gotcha. Okay.
But remember, Elrond's that way too, I think, if I remember right.
Oh, is he? We'll have to look that up. Okay. Tweet at us.
And if he's not, we will erase that.
Again, tweet at us.
Galdor is from the Grey Havens.
Wait, you can come back from the Grey Havens?
Apparently so.
I thought that once you went to the Grey Havens, you were just there. You didn't come back.
That's what you get for thinking.
Okay.
So, and there's a shipwright there who we really don't hear a lot from.
Okay.
Círdan. Then we have Legolas. Legolas is the son of the King of Elves of Mirkwood.
Right.
Okay.
Who we meet in The Hobbit.
His name means his name means green leaf.
I think I knew that.
And his character really is the model of what we think of as a perfect RPG elf.
Okay.
He's resilient, he's strong, he's tall and good looking, and he's hard to hurt physically.
Orlando Bloom.
And this is not a podcast about the movie.
Yeah.
And about your and about your preteen obsession.
It was
with
not
Orlando
an
Bloom.
obsession. It was a minor crush. Anyway. Legolas. Perfect RPG character.
Yes.
Go.
Perfect RPG character. He's resilient, strong, tall, young, good looking, hard to physically hurt. You'll notice at times when they're like walking through snow, he's walking on top of it, where the others are trudging through it. Okay.
Okay.
He wears soft shoes or soft boots. He's not wearing heavy hiking gear
Okay.
because an elf doesn't need that. Boromir, he has a collar of silver with a stone on it.
Right.
He also has this great horn at his side, and he is called a man from the south.
Yes.
Now, thank God that not everything talked about in this council has to be told in this chapter.
Yes. Again, when I first read that, I'm like, wait, no, don't we need all the information? And then I quickly changed my mind.
Glowing talks about them going to Moria.
Right.
And that they have dug too deep. They went too deep and explored, and they ended up working the Nameless Fear. Ooh, a Nameless Fear.
And he also talks about how Bolin and other dwarves left for the place of, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Khazad-dûm. And they left 30 years ago, and they haven't been heard from since.
Right.
Even in... Because I realized something in this chapter is that time is very slow-moving, almost. It's in years and decades instead of days and weeks for humans.
Right.
But even for the long-lived dwarves and hobbits and elves and such, 30 years is a long time to go without hearing from anyone.
Right. And Khazad-dûm, so the dwarves call themselves Khazad.
Okay.
So Khazad-dûm technically translates from Dwarfish to Common as their home.
Okay.
Khazad-dûm, mansion.
Okay.
The mansion or the home of the dwarfs.
Okay.
The place is mentioned to be dark, black, a void, or an abyss. And as you said, a group of dwarfs took off there 30 years ago, and there's been no word heard from them.
Yeah.
Durin, which is mentioned here in the book, is the oldest of the 7 fathers of dwarfs.
Right.
So that's why Durin is so revered.
Right. They even call themselves Durin folk.
Right.
But they do get a message from someone else.
They get a message from Sauron,
Right.
who's in Mordor. And Sauron knows that there's a hobbit that might very well have his ring.
Right. So he sends a message to the dwarves of friendship and being allies, which I thought was very interesting. I was not expecting that. I would expect, from just the little bit I know about Sauron, where he would just be all rain and hellfire, going to mess you up and take over immediately, not express it. Even a fake I don't think he would even express a fake gesture of friendship. So it really threw me.
It's not really friendship. He's trying to recruit them because he knows they're good troops.
Right.
And if he can recruit somebody like the dwarfs instead of fight them,
it would make things probably easier fighting the other groups that he's probably going to have to fight.
Right. And Gloin, the reason he came to Rivendell is to warn Bilbo about Sauron knowing that a hobbit has the ring.
Right. And he specifically calls him a thief. He says a thieving hobbit. But what I thought was really interesting is Sauron's messenger describes this ring as being the lesser of rings.
Of course he is.
Of course. It made total sense. I noted it that they would even say that. It's like, yeah, this ring, it doesn't mean much, but we want it immediately.
Right.
And I feel like that is a crack or a flaw that I found in Sauron, where I feel like the dwarves are not going to be so stupid as to think that this ring that he desperately wants is this lesser, non-essential object.
Right. But he's not just trying to woo them. He also presents them with the possibility of getting the 3 dwarven rings back as well.
Yes, he does try to bribe them with that. And I like how the King of the Dwarves, he says, I need time to think. And so he sends the messenger away, and the messenger comes back, and he says he still needs more time to think. And the messenger says, for the 3rd time will be the final time that I will come, and you either give me your answer or you are our enemy.
Right. And the troubles that the dwarves are having are in many ways the same type of troubles the Western world is having.
Yes.
And we're coming to a point in the book where we're going to hear about what's going on where.
Okay.
And there's really no reason for us to cover that because it's done well within the book.
Okay.
And Gloin also says he's coming for advice from Elrond, too.
Right.
He's not looking for troops. He's looking for advice.
Yes.
And what's interesting is Elrond kind of said... No. So what's interesting here, Elrond is saying So what Elrond says, it's no coincidence that we all gathered here to hear the story of the ring.
Right, because we also learn, it might be jumping around a bit, but Boromir also came to talk and get information, and Legolas came from news from Mirkwood, and they all arrived around the same time.
Right. Now,
very clandestine.
Yes, but a couple of things I want to point out is that even the elves are called, not so much with the word, but they kind of get called out about being greedy for knowledge.
Okay.
All right? So even the elves have some flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's for knowledge, but it's still, they'll do anything almost to gain knowledge.
Right.
And let's pause for a moment. Now, there was information in the first writing of The Lord of the Rings, but Tolkien takes it out and puts it more... There's a lot of talk about this type of stuff that was originally in the book, but Tolkien took it out and put it in other places. This idea about elves being greedy for knowledge is in the appendix of The Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
He's also included the story in some other writings throughout his life. So, the last alliance of elves and men, Elrond states that the Elvens thought evil was ended forever because of that battle.
Right.
When the humans and the elves came together. And I also want to mention here, they don't really use the word human. Mm-hmm. They say man.
Right.
And when they say man and it's capitalized or left by its own, talking about some of the first men, the first humans, where they still had a great deal of power and so forth as well. So, for example, it's mentioned that they average around 6'4".
Okay.
Right? So they're these great looking men who are sturdy and hardy and willing to give it their all to keep evil out.
Okay.
And we find out also that Elrond is much older than previously thought, because he was actually there and witnessed the ring being cut from Sauron's hand.
Right. He mentions that he remembers the fall of Gil-galad, and I just remember that from like earlier stuff that we've talked about, and I had to do a double take. I'm like, wait, what? I didn't think he was that old.
And Boromir is like, so that's what's happening to the ring. And one of the things I find interesting also is Boromir is not mentioning his name because he seems to be afraid to mention it.
Okay.
For example, he says, the great ring of him that we do not name. And he says, the darkness that we do not and he says things like the darkness that we do not name.
Right. There's even a part where a shadow passes, like a cloud passes over the sun and there's a shadow, and everyone just kind of freezes up for a moment.
Right. So in the story, Isildur is the one that took the finger off of Sauron.
Right.
And the finger that had the ring on it. And he goes out again, and only 3 men come back.
Yes.
Tolkien understands the magic, quote and unquote, magic of the number 3. But
well, I mean, that's a very Catholic number.
Right. But also, it's 3 is within legend, too. There's a lot of things that come in 3s.
Okay.
For example, it's not a coincidence if there's 3.
Right.
That type of thing.
Yeah, that's in a lot of myths and legends.
During this tale, we also hear for the first time about the white tree.
Okay.
Which becomes a symbol later on in the book. And the nameless enemy is at Mount Doom, according to Boromir. And that's actually why Boromir is there, was to report on that and to see if he can get any help.
Okay.
And remember how long it took Frodo to get there from the Shire?
Right.
So it takes Boromir 110 days.
Oh.
To get there from his place.
Okay.
Okay?
Dang.
And he comes seeking counsel, not weapons.
Again, it's seeking a different path than fighting.
Right.
Seems to be what the theme is for the people seeking help.
Right. But the main reason Boromir's coming is because of this dream. Originally, his brother, Faramir, had the dream. But he decided he was not going to leave. So Boromir then starts having the dream.
Okay.
And part of the dream, these same words keep getting repeated. I'll only read the first part. Seek for the sword that was broken, and it ends with, the halfling forth shall stand.
Yes. I highlighted that because that was something that we actually talked about from our bonus episode, the Volsung Saga, where that was one of the few similarities that we found in the absolute buck wild tale that you should really listen to if you haven't.
And Strider is now revealed to be Aragorn, the heir of this history.
Yes. Something that I noted is that we get this thing about Aragorn again, and this time instead of the word king being used, the word chief was used. And I thought that was an interesting difference.
Right. And then when Frodo hears this, he basically stands up and goes, "Oh, here, the ring belongs to you. Take it."
Right. And Aragorn's like, it doesn't belong to either of us, but you hold on to it for right now, because I think you're going to be more helpful than me.
And then, let's all take a look at the ring, since we're talking about it.
Right. And they talk about the ring and the story of how it came to be. And I thought it was very interesting that Bilbo, he seemed to really relish in the attention.
Oh, of course.
Of course.
He's a hobbit.
Yes. They love being storytellers.
Yes, and I mean, he writes stories and songs just so people listen to him.
Right. And then during Frodo's turn talking about his part, Bilbo says, I tried to take as much notes as I can, but we'll talk later because this will make a great sequel to my story, which I thought was a little on the nose.
And this sword, the sword that's been broken, will come again.
Yes.
And this is the sword, basically, that Aragorn's ancestors used to chop the ring off of Sauron's hand.
Right.
And the sword is seen by a few there that this is a help beyond hope. So this broken sword that is to be revealed after the ring is found is thought by some people there as the sword would be a help beyond hope, which I think is an interesting term of words.
I agree.
There. And then we also hear about other evil to fight other than the one going on against Gondor. Bilbo reminds them who Aragorn is with his little poem again about all that is gold does not glitter.
Yes, I highlighted that as well. I thought it was interesting that we got a reframe of that.
Right. And then Bilbo tells the story of how he got the ring, being completely honest now.
Right. That was also something else I noticed, is that this is the first time that he's been honest with anyone besides Gandalf and Frodo about how the ring came into his possession. And the only thing I wish I could have known is Glowin's reaction to it, since Glowin was there with him when he first obtained it, and how Bilbo had shortened the story, I guess, and embellished certain parts.
Right. We also find out that evil was driven from Mirkwood the same year that the ring was actually found.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting that is meshing together.
Yes.
Sarah,
is it coincidence or is it fate? That's the question.
That's the question. Now, the head of Gandalf's order, Saruman the White, he denies that the ring would ever be found. But Gandalf wished to find out what has happened to that ring so he can figure out what would happen or what kind of direction they should go if the ring is found again.
Right.
So
and we learn a lot about Saruman right now.
Yes.
He's only been mentioned before, but we finally learn more about him.
Right. And then within all this tale from Gandalf, we find out that Gollum was captured.
Yes.
That Strider, Aragorn, was with Gandalf through a lot of Gandalf's travels.
Yes.
And all the other rings are identified by the type of stone that's in them.
Okay.
And so since this ring doesn't have a stone in it, that is why people want to associate it as one of the lesser rings. But it's not until, as we saw earlier in the book, that when it's thrown into the fire, you can then read what's engraved on the inside.
Right.
And just in case you didn't get it the first time, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them.
Correct. And I think that something that just really struck me is the symbolism of having this plain looking ring being the... And something that really struck me was the symbolism of this plain looking ring being the ring to rule them all. It really kind of reminded me of Frodo, where Frodo is this hobbit where most people kind of think lesser of hobbits. They don't really pay them much attention, but they're the ones that seem to be the hardiest. And like Frodo surviving the witch's blade, it really just... I saw a lot of similarities in that, and I thought that was just really interesting.
Right. And then somewhere in here, Legolas goes, oh yeah, that's why I came to Elrond, to tell you that Gollum has escaped.
Right. Which, how? I mean, I get that Gollum is sneaky and crafty, but, I mean, how?
Well, you have to remember, he lived in that cave around other beings.
He did
And
live around the trolls and the orcs and was able to, and goblins, and was able to stay away from them and kind of stay off their radar.
Right. And then we get more of the tale, which it's just better for you to read it instead of us try to talk about it. But at one point, one of the members of Gandalf's order, Radagast the Brown, comes to warn Gandalf about something. And Gandalf decides he needs to go report this to Saruman. And Saruman reveals himself as being changed.
They use the word traitor.
Right. And he now calls himself Saruman of many colors.
Right. And we learn that Saruman has decided that he is going to ally himself with Sauron and Mordor, and that, if possible, he would wield the ring himself.
Right. He's kind of talked himself into saying, I'm going to pretend to be his friend so I can betray him later.
Right.
But that's not the case, and that's just told so badly, Gandalf kind of scoffs at it.
Exactly. It's bad.
Now, here is something I think is very important for Evelyn to hear. Because she always jokes about...
Oh, I know where this is going. Okay, go for it.
She always jokes about, why didn't the eagles just grab the ring and go? Well, the eagles have gone to the four corners of the world, basically.
Right.
Trying to gather information.
But before that, an eagle rescues Gandalf, who was thrown in a cage, essentially.
Right. The movie shows us him being on top of the tower, which he is. He's on top of the tower in the book. But there's no way down.
Right.
And so an eagle, and there's no way down. So an eagle comes and rescues him. So Gandalf would like the eagle to fly him around. And the eagle's pretty much like, that's not what we do.
Right. Unfortunately.
Right. But here we also see them kind of as angelic beings.
Okay.
Really, too. So they're kind of not of the world.
Okay.
They are more observers.
Okay.
And they only intervene when it's absolutely 100% necessary.
I mean, that really does mesh with the different legends and myths and symbolisms surrounding eagles. They're kind of this higher power that is kind of above human affairs almost. And have you ever met an eagle? They could care less about you.
Right. They just scream at you.
I have had the pleasure of working with a few eagles before, and they don't care. They do not care about you. They don't care that you're the ones that feed them. They're just like, no, leave me alone. I want to go on my way.
Right. And then, speaking of angelic beings, the eagle suggests to Gandalf to get a horse to ride on. And the horse that he finds is Shadowfax.
Okay, so I just realized this is an audio format, so I just gave my dad a what kind of look. Since you guys couldn't see the look that I just gave, because this threw me off.
Right. So Shadowfax, he's basically like an angelic being.
Can I just point out that this is another similarity in the Volsung saga I didn't realize before? Just gonna say that.
I haven't done a lot of this throughout the chapter because we could almost do a bonus chapter of what all these different names mean.
Right.
But fax means hair from Old English.
Hair on our head or hair as in a rabbit?
Hair on our head.
Okay.
All right. And so, but in the English language, it's pretty much not used anymore. But here locally, we have it being used as a name of a city.
Oh, that's right. We have Fairfax.
Fairfax, right. So it's fair hair.
So just a lot of blonde people live there? Or I guess when they named it.
I guess when they named it.
All right, cool.
Okay. So they decide kind of that they need to send the ring into the fire from which it came.
Right, which it was supposed to have done the first time around, but things obviously did not go that way.
Right. And Boromir is not happy about this idea.
Right. He's concerned.
Right. He says, why don't we keep the ring first? Mm-hmm. Use its power, finally destroy the evil, and then we can think about destroying the ring.
Right. And to me, that really says that the people where the ring originated, the stories around it and the myths and legends surrounding it seems to have gotten distorted. That's what that says to me, where they truly do not understand what that power is, what the corruption around it is, what the power of it actually is.
Right. And another reason why I didn't want to get too deep in the story in our episode is because the wording that Tolkien uses and his story building and everything gives you, the reader, a better idea of what's to come, what's so darn important about this ring.
Right.
What's so important about getting rid of this evil.
So if you are reading along with us or just listening and reading for the first time like I am, we highly recommend that you definitely read this chapter, maybe even reread it,
yes,
and really pay attention. Because even though, again, I admit it's a little dry, it's a lot, but it's important.
Oh, and then little old Frodo.
I know.
Stands up.
Well, no, there's a pause. First, there's a pause that lasts for several moments. The noon bell rings and stops, and the moment still continues. And then Frodo stands up.
And says, I will take the ring, though I do not know the way.
And my heart just melted. It's just like, oh, so pure, so wholesome.
And end scene.
Exactly. So, I was wrong. I honestly thought that Boromir was going to say that phrase. I truly did. Like, I felt like it was one of those phrases that everyone makes such a big deal out of that it had to have been in the book. I don't know why, but it screamed like it came directly from the book for me. And I guess I guess making predictions for the next chapter, I'm going to make the same prediction that the Fellowship of the Ring and the people who are tasked with bringing it to Mordor will be formed in the next chapter.
Okay. Well, what else is going to happen in the next chapter, Evelyn?
Well, the chapter is called The Ring Goes South, so I'm going to guess that they go north. No. I am going to guess that they don't go south for very long. I'm going to guess that something happens where they can't go directly south.
Okay.
And this is where my movie knowledge really runs out, so I don't have too much to go on. So I am going to say that for now, the hobbits are all going to stick together.
Okay. Sounds good.
So that's the predictions that I have.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of know that Sam is going to stick with
We
them.
forgot to mention Sam! Because Sam, we mentioned him at the beginning. I'm so glad you said that. We forgot Sam. Everyone forgot Sam. Sam's just kind of snuck into the meeting, and then at the very end, he kind of pipes up, and they're just like, Sam, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm going too, y'all. Like, we're going together. What kind of mess did we get into?
Right. He's like, I was asked. I mean, he doesn't say this, but he's, Gondorf told me to keep an eye on you, and damn it, I am.
Gotta rephrase that. No swearing.
Damn's not a swear word. Wow. It's a thing a chick that beavers build. Okay. So Sam has been told by Gondorf to keep an eye on Frodo, and he's still maintaining that, even though they're here now.
Exactly.
And he's like, I'm going to go with him no matter where he goes.
Exactly. It goes back to this servant mentality, to this cousin mentality, this familial mentality, this protection mentality. There's so many bonds going on here that there's no way Sam is going to leave Frodo at this point in the journey.
Correct. Right, so
can I make the prediction that Sam's with him to the very... Sam is never away from Frodo? I know he's with him at the very end, but can I predict now that Sam and Frodo never get separated? Or at least never get separated for more than, a couple hours?
Okay, you can make that.
Okay, so I'm going to make that broad prediction right now.
All right. Now, what else do you think's going to happen in the next chapter, not book-wise?
Like I said, I feel like, can I predict that it's going to be a pretty straightforward chapter where they're going to kind of get logistics together about where they're going to go and how they're going to do it? Can I say that we're not going to get much of an information dump? It's going to be just thinking and logistics about the here and now, not what has happened?
Okay, we can do that.
All right, cool. So
that wraps up our talk about this chapter.
Right. But we did have something else we wanted to say. A couple people have asked us about our Patreon, and we just want to kind of to clarify what you get out of our Patreon. So there's different tiers and everything, but basically the thing that everyone gets access to is our Discord, where you can talk directly to us and basically tease us about whatever you read and make your own predictions and talk about and discuss the episodes, which Robert still needs to get into. It's been requested that he gets into the Discord. I am very active on it. As well as you get our notes. You get to see the notes that we write down.
No, not mine.
No, sometimes yours, if I remember to take a picture of it, but always mine. You get, at certain tiers, there's stickers. We got stickers.
Stickers!
And then part of that is also, it's feedback from you guys. I mean, there's Patreon exclusive stuff, as well, with other bonus episodes that we're going to be doing, as well as bloopers. But
just like you've said 5 times in 5 sentences.
Like that. Or like our swearing and us having to take it out, realizing, whoops, we swore on a clean podcast. But also,
one thing I find very important in the extra bonus material, it's let's hear Pastor Robert lose his mind.
Because he can't pronounce a word.
And I go on an F rant.
It's hilarious. But part of that is we want to hear feedback from you guys. What other bonus content do you want to see? What other questions do you have for us? What do you guys think about the podcast and the format? So we love that a lot of you have been interacting with us, and we want more. We love it. We thrive off of it. We're doing this not just for me to finally read the books and for us to have this bonding thing, but to share our experience with you guys and have you guys share your experience with us.
Yes. So let us know what we missed talking about also that you might want us to cover, especially like this chapter.
Right.
If you have questions about stuff from this chapter after you read it, feel free to give us a holler and we'll answer them in a show. We'll answer it during a regular show.
Yes.
We'll just do it as a sidebar.
Right.
Fast before or after the main part of an episode.
Yeah. So I think that's all we had.
So Evelyn said so and I don't know how many times. I lost count.
Probably as much as I said like.
I'm Robert.
And I'm Evelyn.
And you've been listening to Talking About It.
See you next time.
Ta-ta for now. Thank you so much for listening. I have been Robert.
And I have been Evelyn.
Podcasters are Robert and Evelyn Lewis.
Edited by Evelyn Lewis.
Produced by Robert Lewis, Evelyn Lewis, Regina, and Comic Canary.
Music provided by Ben Sound. Link in the description.
Support us on Patreon at Talking About It Podcast.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Talking About It.
And Twitter at TokenPod.
Thank you all again for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.